My name is Kendra Apquitz, and I'm Senior Director of Sustainability and Resilience with Mayor Freddie O'Connell's office. And on behalf of Mayor O'Connell's office, thank you so much to each of you for agreeing to serve on our committee and for taking the time to be here tonight. We've got a packed agenda this evening, and so I want to make sure I keep us moving. And if we have some additional committee members filter in, we'll make sure they get settled. Just one note of housekeeping, we are recording and broadcasting today's meeting. If you are going to speak, just make sure you'll see there's a microphone button in front of you. It's sort of on the bottom right. And so just make sure if you are going to speak, before you speak, you press that button once. Only press it once. If you press it twice, it will cause us to have to take a pause and completely reset the system, which we're happy to do, but we want to try to avoid that if at all possible. This is your first test, yes. So I've put on this slide here our agenda for today. So first we'll just do welcome and introduction since it is our first meeting and we're all getting to know each other. I also think it's really helpful to know what kind of expertise is sitting with us at the table today and will be advising us. We'll have our required public comment period. Then we'll have a Choose How You Move presentation, which is our transportation improvement program from Michael Briggs. We'll quickly go over your roles and responsibilities as committee members and what we anticipate this body to be doing. And then I'm going to give you a background on climate planning at Metro, just so that we're all starting from the same foundation. And then we'll transition into a discussion about topics of interest for future meetings. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on. While we will be bringing content for you to advise us on, I want to make sure also that you all are guiding sustainability work here at Metro. And so want to make sure we're setting aside some time to hear from you on what you think Metro should be focusing on and what you want to hear about in future meetings. So with that, we'll transition to our introductions. And we'll just go around the room. We'll each do name, number of years in Nashville, your role or affiliation or tie to sustainability or resilience. I know a lot of us are bringing different perspectives to the table, so feel free to layer in whatever you think is relevant here. And then a personal or a professional sustainability project you're excited about. So I'll kick us off. Again, my name is Kendra Apkowitz. I have lived in Nashville for 37 years now. That'll age me a little bit. As mentioned before, I work in the mayor's office on sustainability and resilience work. And a project I'm really excited about that is a professional one is working with Metro Nashville Public Schools on deploying a cafeteria composting pilot across several different schools. So Caroline, don't forget to turn on your microphone.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Caroline Everett. I have lived in Nashville for 23 years combined. I am the Director of Corporate Responsibility at Alliance Bernstein. And a professional sustainability project that I'm excited about is our LEED certified building up at 5th and Broadway. I'm going to turn it off.
Hi, I'm Jolynn Mesera. I have been in Nashville for a lot of years. I was trying to add it up and I've come and gone, but I was born here, so I'm a Nashvilleian, but I've had some pop-aways. But for the better part of my 52 years, so I'll age myself as well. I'm the Senior Manager of Sustainability and Climate at Tennessee Valley Authority. So I get to work on sustainability issues across the 7-state region. So there's lots of sustainability projects I'm excited about. I think right now the one I'm most excited about is we just published our annual sustainability report. And there's lots of great stories in there talking about our journey and how we're trying to influence sustainability in the region.
Hello, everybody. I am Erica Weeks. I have been in Nashville cumulatively probably 18 to 19 years now. I am the Director of Green Building Certifications for Paladin Engineering, and a exciting time right now as we are on the cusp of LEED version 5, if you're familiar with rating systems for the built environment. I was just in DC for the past week, yesterday and Monday, having meetings regarding the LEED version 5 launch, as I'm part of the overall steering committee for that. So I'm excited to bring some new decarbonization tools and efforts to all projects building wide.
Hi, I'm Joe Bass with Pinnacle Financial Partners. I work on communications, corporate responsibility, and ESG for the firm. I'm a Nashville native and have never left, so I've been here 41 years. And a professional project I'm excited about is in the middle of shaping our climate strategy at Pinnacle, our reporting response, regulatory reporting response, and mitigation efforts.
Hi, I'm Sandy Ewing. I have lived in Nashville for a little over 20 years. I manage sustainability for our military housing portfolio at Lendlease, which is a global real estate investment trust. So that's about 45,000 homes and 40 hotels across the United States. And I'm equally excited and terrified about our efforts to electrify our entire portfolio, which obviously is a long-term project, but hope springs eternal. Oh, yeah, I'm done.
Good. I'm Berkeley Allen. I'm a Metro Council member and a mechanical engineer with I.C. Thomas & Associates, a lead accredited professional, and I've been in Nashville for 42 years. And a project that I'm excited about is we, in the past year, passed the City Pacer legislation, which is a financing tool that will help buildings add a sustainability component that they might otherwise not be able to afford.
I forgot, I'm also on Nashville Council. It's a strange thing to forget, but there you go.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hammond. I've been in Nashville 12 years. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Facility Diagnostics. We're a small consulting company that do building commissioning, energy audits, anything energy related. And I am excited because we are working with a few healthcare companies that's just starting their sustainability journey, and it's a fun process to help people see the path that they need to take.
Good evening, Jason Carney. I'm the founder and CEO of Energy Electives. We do solar design and build, as well as energy efficiency. Also the executive director of the Tennessee Solar Energy Association. Been around sustainability for a while, various roles, from Office of Energy Program within TDEC to Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and in this current role. Been in Nashville all of my life, and I was thinking that was going to be enough, but Joe gave his age, so I'll say I'm 44, be 45 years soon. What I'm probably most excited about is the upcoming rollout of the Inflation Reduction Act and Justice 40 work. Thanks.
Give that a try. I'm Jeffrey Ezell. I'm a native of Nashville and co-owner and director of business development for the Compost Company. We collect and recycle food waste and other compostable materials in Middle Tennessee. We operate a commercial composting facility that's located in Ashland City. I've been doing that since 2017. Before then, I was the recycling coordinator for Metro Nashville Public Works. One thing I'm recently very excited about, there's loads of exciting things going on in the composting world, especially in the Nashville area, but we've started a collection program at Geodis Park in conjunction with Nashville Soccer Club. That's a really exciting one and a super venue to be a part of, but Metro, working with them, has really been working hard to expand their composting efforts, and that's something that I'm very excited about.
Great, thank you. I just get giddy every time I hear about the amazing expertise we have in the room today. Wanted to note that we have a few members who have been confirmed by council who were unable to make it today due to pre-existing travel plans. So we will introduce them at our next meeting, but just wanted to recognize Stephanie Tetro, Linda Bregan, Cesar Castro, Curtis Johnson, and then we also have one more appointment awaiting to be confirmed by Metro Council, Matt Taylor, and hopefully he'll be confirmed, and then we'll be able to join us at our next meeting. So just really excited to have this great group present today. So we'll now transition into our public comment period. There was a sign-on sheet when you entered if you wanted to sign up for public comment. We've got 2 individuals noted, but I would also invite other members of the public to provide comment after we go through those comments. If interested, each person has 3 minutes. So Cindy, you were just signing in. Perfect. Okay. Carrington Howard. Also just signing in. Okay. Any other members of the public who are here who want to provide public comment today? Okay. All right, we will transition to our presentation from Michael Briggs. And so he is going to tell us about the Choose How You Move Transportation Improvement Program. And I've had just the delight of getting to work really closely with him on this project, and am really excited for our city.
Thanks, Kendra. And we got to do the technology swap out real quick. We'll get going. All right, so it's great to be here with you all. I guess this is your first official meeting in this new capacity, so I'm really excited to talk with you all about the Transportation Improvement Program. I often share a little story when we're in settings like this as to how transportation impacts us, because I think it helps us get into a mindset of being able to share our experiences and why this is important. So I'm going to use my one that's more centered around environmental needs. So starting back in the mayor's office on January 2nd, I've been coming in every day. So I take the Springfield commuter bus in some days. It's not something I can do every day, hence, today I'm here after hours and the service doesn't run, but 2 times in the morning and 2 times in the afternoon. But I went back to look at how many miles I've saved from the beginning of the year to end of April. And 1,996 miles I've logged on the bus. And so that's just doing it maybe 2-3 times a week, if that. Some weeks I can't do it at all. And I paint that because it's really an opportunity for us to think about how we get around the community, ways to save on gas, help make our cars sometimes have much longer lives because of that. And so this really can begin to impact, and that's just one example. As we've been working on the Choose How You Move program, others have shared different stories, such as the difficulties of being able to get around by foot and crossing streets. Others have shared the impact that the highway system had on their neighborhood. And so these things, even though we've kind of evolved as a city and are now a much larger city than we were in the past, we take a lot of these experiences growing up or how we're able to get around today, and it kind of shapes our perspective as to how we move from day to day. And so I'm hopeful that you will continue to think about how transportation has impacted you over your lifespan and share some of those stories as we continue to talk about the program. I also share the one of not being able to bike a lot of times. I grew up in Hendersonville, so it's a very similar neighborhood with no sidewalks, and many of us can relate to that. So with the Choose How You Move program, we'll complete the priority sidewalk network when we combine that with capital spending. So a lot of those improvements are focused on our main corridors and pikes. We'll upgrade nearly 600 traffic signals. It'll be our best opportunity to modernize our traffic signal system. We'll expand service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the main corridors, and also across the county with new service options. And then we'll be improving safety for all users, beginning to overlay a lot of improvements in areas where we have high injury locations. And the key thing to remember is that this is now at the Metro Council for first reading next week. So if everything goes to plan, voters will be able to decide on the program November 5th. So this is the reason we need investment now. We have many streets like this on Dickerson Road where people are walking in ditches. It's oftentimes filled with stormwater after a big rain. It's very difficult to access transit on a lot of these pikes. So this condition on Dickerson is very similar to Murfreesboro, Nolensville, and some of our other streets. So Nashvillians get this and agree that we need to act now, and we feel a sense of urgency to do this because we've been talking about this for a very long time. We've based the program on over a decade's worth of plans where we've talked about a lot of the same streets and the level of investment. And so this is an opportunity for us to unlock $1.4 billion of federal investment that could come back to Nashville. We can't compete very well today because we don't have a dedicated source of transportation funding of most of our peers. So of the top 50 cities, only 4 do not have dedicated transportation funding, and Nashville is one of those 4. And so this federal money is often going to other cities like Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Chicago, that have those dedicated sources of funding. The reason we need to do this is that we're continuing to grow. So I won't spend tons of time on this, but just know by the year 2045, we anticipate our region being the size of the Denver region. But with all this growth, there are challenges. So rent and housing costs have gone up for many people. And it's very difficult now for if you make the median household income, to not have a significant portion of your take-home pay consumed with housing and transportation costs. So the median household income now has about 40% of their income just on those 2 expenses alone. And then if you make less than the median income, you're often paying more than 50% of your take-home pay on those 2 expenses. This is really an opportunity to help us drive down the cost of transportation for our residents and help improve quality of life and keep people here and thriving. So I encourage you to find out more about the program at nashville.gov/transit, and I'll focus on these 4 areas of sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. So with sidewalks, we'll add or upgrade 86 miles of sidewalks. So that is like going from downtown Nashville to Cookeville. These sidewalks are focused on your main corridors, and it's intended to connect to transit. So there's a significant boost in our walkable neighborhoods with the completion of the sidewalk network. This also completes the priority sidewalk network that's identified in our strategic sidewalk and bikeways plan called Walk and Bike. And so you'll have access like this on Dickerson Road where new development would be able to connect in with existing sidewalks and bus shelters and crossing locations. So this is also improving walkable access to transit for 1 out of every 3 Nashville residents and is focusing the improvements in some underrepresented neighborhoods. So with traffic signals, this is like us going from AOL dial-up to streaming because we have a very disconnected signal network right now. And you've experienced this when you see the police officer out next to a traffic cabinet pushing a button. He's doing a great job of clearing that intersection, but we often see kind of 4 or 5 signalized intersections down that traffic begins to back up. And so it's not managed at a comprehensive level. And we have the opportunity by upgrading over 600 traffic signals to have analytics running behind that, monitoring the traffic congestion, and it also connected into a traffic management center that will alert engineers to issues. So if the power goes down on a corridor today and gets brought back on, we don't know if a signalized corridor is completely out of sync until someone puts that into like Hub Nashville. And then the signal technician is often having to go out to the traffic cabinet and reset it, or they're in some instances able to dial in. But this is what the traffic management center will look like. It's actually in this building here. And it won't have all the signals connected yet, but we'll be able to bring on the new signals that are upgraded into the management center. With service, there's a lot here that I won't be able to cover, but I'll hit the main highlights. So we'll establish 54 miles of all-access corridors. That's where we upgrade everything on our busiest corridors. So this is improved sidewalks, improved safety, much more reliable and frequent transit service at 15 minutes or less, and then also the improved signalization. Think of these corridors being on Nolensville, Murfreesboro, Donaldson, Dickerson, Gallatin Road, West End, Clarksville, Charlotte Avenue. So it's a lot of our main pikes that go in and out of downtown. This will help us also double our hours of frequent service, and we'll have a significant number of bus stop upgrades as part of this. One thing that's unique with the program is that we have a really good example of the North Nashville Transit Center, so the Rip Patton Transit Center, coming online this summer. It's a great example of how we can adjust service as new transit centers come online. So that has allowed transit service on Trinity Lane for the first time that connects from Gallatin Road over to Clarksville Pike. So we're now connecting East Nashville over to Bordeaux and vice versa. So these transit centers allow us to go from neighborhood to neighborhood without having to go into downtown and back out, and significantly improve travel time for transit riders. 12 of these are a part of the program, and some of these have additional land that would be as part of the transit center where we could co-locate other needs such as housing, parks, and so a private or joint development agreement would be done in order to leverage that opportunity there. Then looking at the bigger picture from Davidson County out, there's 4 express routes that would connect into 17 park and rides. And this is how we begin setting up much more frequent service to connect throughout the region. So as other counties want to come online and connect into the network, we're able to respond and adjust accordingly. So think of the park and rides. Those are the pink circles in Jolton, Antioch, Bellevue, Rivergate as being connection points into the WeGo system. Also, as part of this, we'll be able to expand Star service, the train, onto the weekend. It still remains sort of a limited service as it is today because there's certain constraints that we have in order to operate that. WeGo Access, that is our paratransit service for those with mobility needs, only operates until 1 a.m. It is across the county and available, but this will allow us to be able to operate it 24/7. And then finally, the WeGo Link service, which is where we subsidize an Uber ride in areas where we don't have a really good connection to transit. So think more rural areas and your suburban areas. So parts of Antioch, Bellevue, Jolton, Goodlettsville, we'll be able to expand those zones and open them up for connections into the WeGo Link service. Also, as part of this, we'll have a income-based program for free transit rides. We don't have a program at all today. We offer reduced rates for older adults and those with disabilities, but we do not have anything based on income. And so if you qualify through like nutrition assistance or housing eligibility, those would be similar programs where we would be able to qualify you for free WeGo transit rides. So in the end, we're trying to drive down the cost of living and really expand the service to meet our 24/7 workforce. A lot of our service workers, hospitality industry, tourism industry, medical, safety professionals work beyond the typical 9-to-5 job. And so this begins to put transit service working around the clock for them to utilize. Then finally, with safety, we've overlaid a lot of these improvements to address where we have a higher number of injury and fatal crashes. So 35 intersections are redesigned, and then we've identified 39 miles of complete streets where we'll introduce elements like on 12th Avenue South, and try to make the street work for more people. Whereas it may have just been built to 4 lanes, it is an opportunity to start connecting it with improved bus shelters, bike lanes, improve the pavement markings, signage, and lighting. So you're probably wondering, how soon can we get this done? And it's an ambitious program because we're going to deliver this program in 15 years. But think about things such as service happening sooner and capital projects taking a little bit more time and taking some years to construct and implement. So it's a matter of getting buses delivered and drivers hired in order to start expanding some of the service hours for the WeGo system. So getting it expanded to 24/7 on key routes is probably something that can be done much sooner. Expanding some of the service onto other corridors is something that can happen sooner. The income-based program is also something in the first few years. Then things like technology improvements come along, sidewalks continue to be designed and constructed, and we start having engagement around the all-access corridors. So the complete program is then done within 15 years. So what this means to your pocketbook is that it's a 0.5-cent sales tax surcharge that is proposed. And so as you spend $50, you pay an additional 25 cents on purchases. So that averages about $6 per month for most households in Davidson County. And there's 2 aspects of this that make this unique for Davidson County. One is that the sales tax rate in surrounding counties are already at this 0.5-cent increase. The only exception is Sumner County. And so if you shop at any point in Cool Springs, at the Avenue in Murfreesboro, or the Providence and Mount Juliet, you're paying that higher sales tax rate already. The other thing, the second thing with the sales tax is that 60% of that is paid by those coming in and out of Davidson County. So that's people commuting or visitors who are here traveling. And so this ends up being an opportunity for us to really reduce the cost of owning and maintaining a car. We're able to stretch out the life of our vehicles longer. And I provided that example of myself as one example. Because costs for new cars are ranging about $1,000 a month when you begin factoring in car payment, insurance, gasoline, and then saving up for repairs. So that is the high-level overview of the program. I encourage you to go to the website. We have an interactive mapping function where you can zoom in and out of different parts of the county, click on different layers, see what kind of services are proposed with the program. We'll also be adding some district-level information that's in more PDF type format, where we've got lists of projects as well, so that'll soon be available on the website. And I'm happy to take any questions that y'all have.
First of all, thank you so much for walking us through that. As you've been, I assume, giving this presentation to different people, what has been some of the reception and feedback that you've seen or heard?
So I think people like that we are addressing the basics that have been overlooked for some time and trying to do this much more smarter and brilliantly. A lot of these streets were widened in the 60s and 70s and frankly have not been touched since. Signals may have been updated in like the 80s or 90s. And Nashville's changed a lot. And so it's really an opportunity for us to re-envision these streets, make them work better, make them work for our modern needs. I think people are beginning to realize the impact that this begins to have going into some of the neighborhoods, because this, even though it's focused on main corridors, you can quickly see how some neighborhoods can be tied in and able to get around much quicker. I think the tone is different than past attempts. So like in 2012, when we looked at bus rapid transit on West End, and then with the 2018 proposal, I think people are beginning to see that we need to act and act much sooner than we have been.
Have you, do you see a timeline for when you might be able to have some sort of ridership projections if the plan is implemented?
So we have not done that with this. And where this will come into play is when we look at the all-access corridor. So we'll have to go through, I hate calling it the federal process, but it is a required process in order to leverage the federal money. That usually starts with an alternatives analysis, goes into looking at different modes. So it goes back to looking at light rail, bus rapid transit, express bus, no bus. It looks at a couple of different alignments. And then it goes into an environmental and preliminary engineering stage. And so as it gets into those stages, you begin to know what the ridership projections would be. But at this scale, it's really hard to project that at this moment.
Have we already identified, I'm sure we have, but have we already identified sources of federal funding that we can leverage? And what's the timing on being able to access those? So you sort of alluded to the fact that there's some hoops we have to jump through. So what's that looking like?
Yeah, so we will start, if this passes in November, you're able to start leveraging the tax on February 1st. You can start looking into grant programs because you've begun to make a financial commitment to this, and it takes some time to get the applications in, get all of your legal paperwork, all of that stuff done. So we can really begin working on that almost immediately in terms of the grant opportunities. There are several transit-specific grants, so you'll hear about capital improvement grants, small starts, new starts. They're all part of a bipartisan infrastructure law. This goes back to reauthorizations of transportation bills from the early 1990s. The reason I'm going all the way back to then is that the federal government has never stopped doing this. So they have always either extended the current legislation or have reauthorized brand new legislation. And the federal money that's going into these programs has always increased. So it's possible this stuff could go away at any point, if administrations change or there's different thinking, but that has not been the case since the early 1990s. Yeah.
You mind, do you have an idea why the tone changed since 2012? And also, are there any projected carbon offsets? I mean, I really like the plan, especially not having to go all the way in downtown to get from one place to another. Any estimated idea projections around carbon offsets?
So related to the tone change, I just think we're experiencing a lot of challenges with growth. I can tell you I was in different positions in both of those attempts. And this proposal, I feel like kind of meets Nashville where we're at. And I don't know in the other two if we were ready or if people were seeing maybe that vision that was there. Not that they weren't good proposals or good plans. This is definitely has a different tone to it because I have been expected to get a lot of pushback in some meetings, and there's either not much of a reaction or people seem to be okay with it. Not to say that everybody's pleased with everything in the program. In regards to carbon offsets, we have not calculated something like that with the program, but the key thing to remember is that about 51% of our greenhouse gas emissions are related to the transportation sector. So as part of this program, we would expect to offset some of that.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
So any thoughts on how we make the bus not a last resort, like, oh, my car's broken down, I need to take the bus, shoot, to let's make it sexy. Like, how do we make it like an exciting first choice, or at least just a first choice if it's not totally exciting?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to do there. I think there is just a perception that's been long held in Nashville about what the bus means and who takes the bus that is inaccurate. It really is an opportunity to kind of free up your time. It's freeing, frankly, if you're not having to deal with traffic and that headache. For some people, it is how they get around. So honestly, I think it's just getting out there and trying it and doing it on a day where you're not feeling rushed. You're able to go and know that, like, you know, you may make a mistake. If you do have a bad experience, try it again. Because I would say many times it's a very positive experience, and then you occasionally do have a hiccup here or there. But it's not like anything else, like driving or flying. You know, you have those similar things too. So I think the big thing is just getting people to try it. And not just try it in other cities, but try it here in Nashville. And I think they will be pleased at what they experience. Technology has come a long way, so you're not having to stand out there and wonder, is the bus coming? Did I miss it? You can track the buses now. So it's just like Uber and Lyft. It's a bus instead of a car that's coming to pick you up. All right. I really, these are great questions and really appreciate this opportunity. I'll just end that we're able to do additional talks, so similar presentation, and can make it shorter, longer, take other questions. So there is a link on the Hub Nashville site where you can put in requests to schedule a transit talk. So we're happy to come to neighborhood association meetings or other board type meetings and talk this through as well. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Michael, and just really appreciate the opportunity to share information with this group on that plan, especially given the significant opportunity to build sustainability through those reduced greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm glad you asked that question, Jason. We were going to bring that up if somebody didn't. So next on our agenda is a quick review of this group's roles and responsibilities. And so I'm going to let Jordan Wilkins, also from the mayor's office, working with us on transit work, come do this next portion.
Hello. All right. I'm excited to be here and to welcome all of you to your first official meeting. So we will get started. All right, so how did this committee get created, right? Where did it begin? It started with Metro Council with an ordinance. They created an ordinance, and the ordinance title there, as you can see on the screen, was it amended our code as it was written to create this committee, a sustainability advisory committee to guide Nashville and Davidson County efforts in sustainability and resilience to further the community livability and economic competitiveness. So that's how it was started. The timeline of that, June the 27th was when it was filed with Metro Council. August the 1st of 23, it was passed by Metro Council and signed by the mayor August 10th. So what about the composition, membership, and term of the appointments? So there are 15 members to this committee. They are appointed by the mayor, and then those members are confirmed by the Metro Council. They are for 2-year terms that you have, 2-year terms. The code specifies 12 of the 15 members. What are those membership components that those people have to have for 12 of the 15 members? We'll go through those. At least 3 of the members have to be representatives from environmental, sustainability, and resilience interest from the private for-profit sector. At least 3 members have to be representatives of environmental, sustainability, resilience, and interest from nonprofit community members. At least 1 member shall be a representative from higher education. At least 2 members shall be representatives from the Metro Council. At least 1 member shall be a representative of the mayor. and at least 2 members shall be representatives of the general public. So 12 of those positions are defined in code, have to meet specific requirements. 3 of them do not. All members have to be a Davidson County resident. That is a requirement because you are officially part of Metro. Have to be a Davidson County resident, and you cannot accept compensation. Other parts of the code, so it has a section in here for invited attendees. So these individuals are not members of the committee, but it says in the code that they are to be invited to attend all meetings. Typically, as you can see, these are people in departments, department heads, and it is implied that they would be invited, and they would be here to answer any questions from you all about efforts they are doing in each of their departments and to assist you in your work here. So we'll go through those. The Director of General Services, who I believe is with us today, Mr. Gerald. Director of Metro Water Services, a Waste Services team member, the Director of Parks and Recreation, Director of the Nashville Department of Transportation, the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Transit Authority, WEGO, Executive Director of Planning, the Director of Emergency Services, Director of Social Services, Director of Schools, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Development Housing Authority, and Chief Executive Officer of Nashville Electric Service. So as you can see, there was a good intent here to invite all those people so that that encompasses a wide range of actions that Metro does and services that are provided. And hopefully as this committee gets underway in your work, you'll be actively working with each of those members. Meetings. The code says that you are to meet quarterly. So 4 times a year is a requirement, but you're not limited to that. You can have other meetings as you see fit, but you're required to meet quarterly. Because you are a part of the government, you are established by council in the code now. We have to comply with Open Meetings Act like we are today. Members of the public are always invited to attend, and there has to be a public comment section as we did in the beginning. And finally, with powers and duties. So think of this part right here at the beginning as your mission statement. What are you here to do? The code says the committee shall guide the metropolitan government's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and detrimental environmental impacts, such as negative impacts to air quality, water quality, and land resources, and increase economic competitiveness, sustainability, and resilience. So that's a lot, right? What does that look like? What are some examples of that might be that this committee might partake in? First of all, you can identify opportunities and make recommendations to advise and implementing plans such as climate mitigation, adaptation actions for the mayor's office, for the Metro Council, departments, agencies of the metropolitan government. So think of yourself as an advisory board. You're here to advise and make recommendations to each of those that you think Metro should be doing or participating in, an advisory board. Number 2, identifying funding and financing resources that the metropolitan government can leverage in executing environmental sustainability and resilience projects. So what that means is you, as board members, can actively go online and see, what are funding opportunities that are out there? What are potential grants that Metro departments could be applying for and taking to Metro Council to get approved? You as the committee have the opportunity to do that, and that's extremely helpful. Number 3. Advise Metro where there may be opportunities to collaborate across departments at various levels of government and with non-government organizations on environment, sustainability, and resilience topics. So what that means is you as a board may see opportunities for our local government to collaborate with state partners, federal partners, and even community organizations that are working on these topics. You have the opportunity to make those recommendations and to the mayor's office, to council, and hopefully they take your recommendations and act on that. And it's an important part of the governing process. And finally, to identify opportunities to reduce impacts resulting from climate change. So each of you in the work that you do see things every day, you know things that we should be doing or that we could improve on, and you have the opportunity to bring those recommendations and advisement forward. And we appreciate you being a part of this process and serving, and look forward to the results from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Any questions on roles and responsibilities just covered by Jordan before we transition into our next topic? And I want to welcome Curtis Johnson. Thank you for joining us. All right. So before we go into brainstorming and sort of thinking about ideas and topics that might be of interest to this group, I wanted to provide some context on climate planning at Metro and sort of where we've been to date. This is a very, very high-level overview. As for those of you who have lived in Nashville or worked a lot with Metro government, sustainability and resilience work is very active and ongoing throughout multiple different departments, as you could see in sort of the listing of invited departments that Jordan just shared with you in code. It's a highly distributed and interdisciplinary topic, and that's one of its strengths, but also makes it really challenging to do that work. And so please know that this is like a very, very high-level overview, but we'll have plenty of opportunity as a group to do deep dives on specific topics if that's of interest. So as noted before, we've been probably on a more significant sustainability journey as a city, really starting in 2009, and that really first coalesced efforts around the topic of greening government and the community when Mayor Carl Dean formed a Green Ribbon Committee and developed recommendations for increasing sustainability. That was followed up in 2017 by Mayor Megan Barry's Livable Nashville plan. And then most recently, under the Cooper administration in 2021, the prior version of our Sustainability Advisory Committee developed a really robust report called Climate Action Plan, primarily focused on greenhouse gas emissions mitigation. Our most recent adaptation planning document and kind of our first foray into saying, okay, climate change is here. It's not only about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, but how do we adapt and change our city to address a changing climate is currently still in draft form, but we're hoping to finalize this summer. And that is our Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on those two most recent plans here in a moment. Concurrent with most of these plans, we've also made commitments to sign on to various initiatives associated with the United States Conference of Mayors. So there's a program called Climate Mayors. There's also Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. And these are largely commitments to be sustainable, be more resilient. Sometimes they're associated with a numeric target for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And so typically what we've seen is production of a report of recommendations primarily focused on either sustainability as a concept in a very interdisciplinary sense or specifically on greenhouse gas emissions mitigation, coupled with a commitment as part of a collective of cities, either in the country or internationally, to reduce carbon impacts. Unfortunately, what that means is that we've done a lot of planning. So similar to how Michael was talking about doing decades of transportation planning, we've done a lot of planning, but we have really not had execution as our strength. And so that's what we're really trying to focus on now. So a little bit more about the two plans that are serving as blueprints for our work right now. I do want to note that these are dynamic plans. We're constantly updating and shifting priorities as we explore what is feasible and isn't feasible, as we understand where there are resources we can leverage. But these are essentially the blueprints that we're working from right now. And so as I mentioned before, our most recent effort to engage in greenhouse gas emissions mitigation work is our Climate Action plan that was developed in 2021 under the leadership of Mayor Cooper, but significantly by a highly interdisciplinary group of civic leaders, elected officials, representatives of higher education nonprofits, and Metro staff, as well as the private sector. And so several of you in this room actually were significantly involved in that effort. Thank you. It is a really, really robust plan, so robust that it has close to 300 different individual strategies across 6 different topics. Those topic areas were each formed into a subcommittee and essentially were set forth to identify those specific mitigation strategies in those different areas. So there were separate reports, mini reports developed for energy, green buildings, mobility, natural resources, and waste reduction. There was also a draft adaptation chapter created, but never finalized. And so we picked up on a lot of the work that served as that foundation to help inform our climate adaptation and resilience plan that we'll talk about here in a moment. Anyone who's been responsible for a plan, your eyes probably popped when you saw the 294 individual strategies. That's a lot of specific recommendations to try to prioritize and then implement. And so the report creators did a great job of trying to keep us focused on sort of what are our most significant actions that are going to give us the most bang for our buck. And so they consolidated those 294 strategies into 40 narrative bulleted policy focus areas. And part of what informed that prioritization was our greenhouse gas emissions. So which of those actions across those different categories are going to give us the most bang for our buck and have the highest reduction potential. And so I share that with you because if you view this report or when you review this report, it's interesting to see what rose to the surface and then what didn't. But again, part of that was the prioritization approach that was taken, and that was taken in large part associated with frameworks for climate action planning, but also commitments that we had made in the Global Covenant of Mayors. So I mentioned that this most recent climate action plan that we're working from was significantly informed by greenhouse gas emissions. I wanted to pause and take a moment to talk about greenhouse gas emissions as a community, again, just to provide context as to where we are today. I say today, and you'll see on this slide that these are 2019 community emissions. So our Department of General Services, and as mentioned before, Director Smith and Jennifer Westerholm, who oversees our sustainability efforts within that department, are here today. We engage in calculating our greenhouse gas emissions roughly every 3 years. And the most recent effort was completed in 2022 using 2019 data. And so that's what you see here on this slide. Every time we go through this effort, we calculate our community emissions as well as our metro government operations emissions. And so this what you see on this slide is, again, community as a whole. Where we see those emissions, we again have similar information, just looking at metro government operations, and we use that in very different ways to inform what we're doing as a whole of government. But I think this is really important to share with this group. So as Michael mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why we brought that Choose How You Move program to this group in our first meeting was it's very relevant and something that is currently being worked on and evolving and is going to be a major initiative for Mayor O'Connell. A second reason is that over half of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector. So the strategies within that plan present real significant opportunity to reduce community emissions. Other important takeaways is that close to another half of our greenhouse gas emissions come from energy consumption. So if you look across commercial energy consumption, which right now stands at 20%, Councilmember Allen mentioned that she was at an event this morning that talked about opportunities and different incentives and financing mechanisms that we're trying to make available to the commercial sector in particular, but also residential and industrial energy consumption are really significant. And then you see solid waste come in at 4% and various other areas. And so that's just, again, a high-level snapshot as to where we see our emissions coming from today. we are starting to organize efforts to do another update, and I believe we're going to be using 2022 data. And so what will be really interesting is to see how this pie chart changes, particularly recognizing that COVID and the pandemic have created more opportunities for people to work remotely. So stay tuned for that, and I'm sure there's plenty of opportunity for this group to engage in that process. So a little bit about numeric targets included in that climate action plan. I mentioned that it had narrative policy focus areas. It also included recommendations for targets. So from an energy and green buildings perspective, there is a numeric target associated with greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 80% by 2050. We have since then moved forward and adopted that via resolution, and our mechanism for regularly providing updates on that is our greenhouse gas emissions calculation that General Services does for us. From a mobility perspective, there were two targets included. One that encourages people to get out of vehicles or carpool, and you'll see those targets here on this slide, so reducing those drive-alone rates from 79% to 40% by 2050, and then increasing EV adoption, so recognizing that vehicles will still be a choice for moving around the city, and so how are we greening those fleets during that process. From a waste reduction perspective, this plan actually picked up on an existing plan focused on zero waste that had been created several years prior. And so our numeric target there is achieving zero waste, and that's defined as 90% or higher diversion from the landfill by 2050. And then from a natural resources perspective, we didn't necessarily have a numeric target, but an intention to focus on heat and flooding, and you'll see here in a moment when we talk about our climate adaptation resilience plan, why those are risks that we're particularly interested in. While we're still on the topic of mitigation, I also wanted to note there are a few other requirements and targets that we frequently talk about within Metro, and so quickly wanted to touch on those because you're likely to hear about them throughout your time here. So current then council member Freddie O'Connell moved forward a trio of really significant pieces of legislation. One is a Metro fleet electrification program, and that requires 100% or transition to 100% zero emissions vehicles by 2050 for our general government fleet. We also have requirements for reductions in average energy and greenhouse gas emissions for our government buildings, and a requirement to essentially manage those strategically through planning processes. We also have a renewable portfolio standard, and that is to source 100% of our energy from renewable sources for general government operations by 2041. And then also as part of that trio of legislation that Mayor O'Connell put forward, we have significantly robust green building requirements to pursue LEED certification. Depending on where that facility is located in the county, it's either going to be gold or silver. And so all of those requirements are actually delegated to the Department of General Services. And so Jennifer and her team are really wonderful in helping coordinate and facilitate those efforts, and then also assist with reporting. Wanted to quickly touch on building codes. So our most recent update to building codes here was done in 2019 actually. 2020, and it adopted 2018 IBC, and there are significant energy efficiency and resiliency improvements for built infrastructure as part of that. But looking at building codes is likely to be a topic that this group will address. I mentioned that we already have adopted our greenhouse gas emissions target via resolution, and at the end of last legislative session, we also adopted a community-wide and Metro target of 50% reduction in food waste from 2017 levels by 2030. So really starting to see a focus on solid waste management, but also organics in particular. You're going to hear me say this a lot, but sort of in the spirit of recognizing how distributed sustainability is throughout Metro government, I want to note that these are, I've only highlighted today, for the most part, policies, requirements, that are explicitly related to sustainability and sustainability in particular. We have a variety of existing metro policies that also serve or have the benefit of improving and enhancing sustainability, but they might not be talked about or framed as such. And so we'll get plenty of time to talk about those, but wanted to note that this isn't exhaustive. It is just really things that are explicitly talked about as sustainability targets. So let's transition a little bit to climate adaptation or the resilient side of things. As I mentioned before, we're fairly young in our adaptation and resilience journey in terms of talking about it in that sense. And our current effort that we're working from is a planning effort that unfolded over about 18 months in partnership with Fuse, which provided us a fellow for a little over a year to help us develop this plan. We did this at the end of the Cooper administration and are currently under the new administration working to refine and finalize that plan with hopeful release later this summer. And really what this plan aims to do is identify Metro's main climate hazards, the potential severity of impact and likelihood of occurrence, looking at future climate change projections and how that's going to change future risk. It also serves the purpose of conducting a high-level climate risk and vulnerability assessment from a whole systems perspective, and then set forward to outline some high-level strategies that could be implemented by Metro to build resilience to future extreme weather events. And so what you see here on this slide is just a brief table summarizing some of those climate risks that we anticipate seeing and increasing in the future. So I think major takeaways here are flooding, extreme heat and extreme cold, as well as storm events, whether that be just high wind events or tornadoes, are probably our most significant concerns that we really need to be planning for and thinking about in the future. Following after that, still important to think about, but not necessarily as high on sort of our priority list, are earthquakes as well as landslides. And so these are the kinds of risks we need to be thinking about in the future. That doesn't mean that that's all we need to be planning for. For those of you who are well-versed in adaptation and resilience planning, one of the good things is that a lot of your adaptation and resilience strategies may provide benefits across multiple different types of disaster emergency scenarios, not just a single type of weather event. And so that's one benefit here, but definitely a new area for us. This plan, once you can read it now in its draft version. It's on our website. In its final version, it's currently amounting to over 200 pages long. It is a dense plan. It's very robust, very detailed, and so part of what's taking us so long to refine that is to try to make it a little bit more manageable for the general public. But one thing I did want to share with you is a listing of our adaptation strategies and how we have them organized. So they're outlined across kind of 4 pillars of work. One that focuses on equitability, safety, accessibility, and affordability for residents in the context of a changing climate. And you'll see within that high-level goal area, then there are some objectives listed and then individual strategies. As mentioned before, these are not intended to be exhaustive, but were identified as sort of high priority actions that could be completed within the 1 to 10 year timeline and hopefully without commitment of significant resources. That's not to say we don't want to commit significant resources to this, but I think we've recognized that we will probably always be operating in a constrained environment. And so how are we really trying to leverage existing work or financial streams to get these things done? Second focus area is improving and protecting public infrastructure and services from growing climate risks. One example that I think has been really apparent to Nashvillians is potholes around the city. We're seeing that increase in terms of what we're needing to require from a budgetary perspective to maintain our roads. We're seeing that they're not performing as well as maybe we would like, and so that's just one example that I know most of us have interacted with in recent months. And so taking steps to make sure that all of our public infrastructure and services are well equipped to deal with that with climate change is something we're focused on. Also recognition that nature and natural resources are an important tool that we have, but also something that we want to make sure we preserve and keep around. And so recognizing again the significant resource that it can play when we're trying to address climate change is a huge part of this plan. And then the fourth high-level focus area is really trying to make resilience part of standing operating procedures in metro government. So how are there sort of small ways and easy ways to start infusing this into all of our activities? And so as mentioned before, it is a very robust document, but this is just a snapshot of some of the adaptation strategies that are recommended within that plan. So I wanted to quickly now transition into some of what the O'Connell administration and what I'll be focusing on in my role is as it relates to the topics that we're here for. Something that I'm incredibly excited about is that when the O'Connell administration worked through the transition planning process, they organized subcommittees that were focusing on making recommendations as to how Nashville can grow, work, and move. I say I was excited because I instantly realized, hey, sustainability and resilience has a role to play, an important part of each of these different areas. And so there are a variety of ways that as we grow, we can bake sustainability and resilience into that process. And the same holds true for works and operational activities, as well as moves. And we just heard a lot of the recommendations associated with the Choose How You Move program. So beyond obviously figuring out and finding ways to embed sustainability and resilience into each of these different areas, a couple of focus areas that I know are going to be top of mind and sort of consistent areas of opportunity in my role are, again, continuing our emissions reductions trends, looking specifically at the transportation sector and our buildings, recognizing again that transportation sector and energy consumption in built infrastructure are significant sources of emissions. Trying to work collaboratively with a variety of different types of stakeholders to really clean up our energy footprint. That includes working with folks like the Tennessee Valley Authority, Nashville Electric Service, and then also within our own metro government footprint. And thinking about different ways that we can leverage renewable energy and other zero emissions resources to power our operations. And then the last area I wanted to touch on is solid waste reduction, diversion, and long-term management strategies. We have known for quite some time as a city and really as a Middle Tennessee region, and in some circumstances as a state, that there's limited landfill capacity. And so we need to start thinking very creatively and aggressively about how we manage our solid waste. But even before that, how are we reducing that footprint and creating a circular economy here? Recognizing that we will probably not ever be able to divert all of that, also building a long-term management strategy that is sustainable in a financial sense as well. So I'll be spending a lot of time on that. Another effort that we will talk at length about moving forward is Bloomberg's Sustainable American Cities. So shortly after Mayor O'Connell took on his leadership role, we learned that we were selected as one of 25 cities to participate in this 3-year initiative that's really designed to leverage historic levels of funding to build low carbon resilient and economically thriving communities. So trying to use innovation to work at the intersection of climate change and wealth equity. And so it's a really great multidisciplinary effort. We're excited to be at some point in the coming months getting 3 innovation team members to help lead up this work and to collaborate very intensely with community-based organizations and local stakeholders to really mobilize those investments and try to get federal funding here into the city. And so on this slide, you get to see our cohort that we'll be working with, and so there's a lot of opportunity for peer information exchange as well. Just quickly wanted to touch on some of the activities related to BASC, or Bloomberg American Sustainable Cities. We are in the process, as mentioned before, of recruiting those applicants and interviewing them. They're actually managed by Johns Hopkins University and their Center for Public Innovation. And so, we're collaborating very closely with them and hope to have those individuals selected sometime later this summer, and then on board working here in our community. For those of you who are following federal funding right now, you're probably aware of the EPA Community Change Grant. It is a massive opportunity and pot of funds through the Environmental Protection Agency to build community change through sustainability, environmental stewardship, and increasing environmental justice. And so it presents a real opportunity for us to leverage that funding to help us implement a lot of our BASC work. So I mentioned before that BASC comes with 3 positions focused on this. It doesn't come with any implementation dollars. And so our goal is to find a budget to help implement some of the work that our I-team will be designing in partnership with the community. It's a 2-track grant process through a variety of different conversations with current community leaders. We've actually decided to pursue both of those. So we're running 2 parallel but related and coordinated grant application development processes right now. To date, we've engaged about 40 different community-based organizations with a focus on those that are Black or minority-led as part of that wealth equity component. And so we'll be developing over the next 10 weeks both of those grant applications and hoping to submit those to EPA really in the September-October timeline. So one of those, which is focused on community-driven investments for change, I like to think that is more of the sort of big ideas and big projects bucket. We are contemplating at this point development of an environmental equity strategy and program that focuses on education, policy, workforce development, as well as major decarbonization demonstration projects that again look at that intersection of climate change and wealth equity. And then the second is actually going to be creation or enhancement of a CBO convener for Black and minority-led CBOs to make sure that we're adequately resourcing those CBOs to do great work and to build upon the existing activities that they're doing in the community. So more to come on that. As part of this, we also get to participate in the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And so that is a great tool for local governments to really strategically think about how they're building race and equity considerations into their activities. So we're excited about that. So that ends my sort of intro-level slides. As mentioned before, does not go into significant detail on a whole host of exciting things that are happening right now in Metro. More of that to come, but wanted to use the remainder of our time to get some feedback from this group on sort of what is top of mind for you and what are you seeing when you're out and about in our community as sustainability and resilience things that we need to be thinking about. And so how we'll use this feedback is a couple of ways. One, it might identify a project or area that Metro is not currently working on that we need to be working on, or it might result in bringing in a subject matter expert from one of our departments to share information with you about what current work looks like and then have a discussion about where it could go moving forward.
I have a few. So as you're doing the update for the emissions breakdown, is there a possibility that you might be able to further break down some of those categories? So that I'm thinking particularly of, transportation, commercial, industrial, but, transportation getting a good look at what is commercial and what is residential. Because I think that would really help inform the strategies for reduction, because, I'd be interested later down the road in a report from offices of economic and community development, entrepreneurship and economic development on any efforts, if there are any, to advise local businesses on grants, tax credits, incentives related to Inflation Reduction Act and Justice 40. I think that would be, you could create a roadmap for advising kind of the private world on what they can be doing and the business outcomes that can be improved because of that and the cost savings. Also might be interested in a report quantifying potential risks and impact to the local economy posed by physical and transition risks to climate change. Really would be interested in taking the temperature of the local business community. If this is on their radar, if they have concerns, if they've taken steps to prepare, if there are any resource or information gaps that maybe the city or city partners could help fill. And then this is kind of longer term, but any conversation or thought that's been given to changing migration patterns. Nashville is already in high growth mode. Part of that is due to our favorable climate, I feel like, in addition to economic opportunities, but the favorable climate part is liable to grow. And so any thought that's been given to that, I think would be really good to hear.
Great.
Thank you. This was a ton of information. So thanks to you and everybody else for
Yeah,
giving me.
absolutely.
I've got about 2 pages of good notes here.
Yeah, so these are great ideas. I love the idea of advising sort of local businesses on grants, tax credits, and other opportunities. As far as breakdown of emissions is concerned, yes, we have the ability to do that. This is just a high-level distilled. Michelle's cracking up because she used to actually manage this for us, and so she knows the level of detail that's there. And I'm looking at Jennifer because it will be her shop that and Freddie. I didn't even see you walk in, Freddie. There's Freddie. So yes, we can definitely give you much more detail and a breakdown on that. I'll share that GNRC also does some sort of regular analysis of transportation sector. The benefit of GNRC is that they're going to be looking beyond just Davidson County. So our work here is just going to look at Davidson County. GNRC is going to look at, I think, a 13-county region, or just the MPO, which is slightly different than their entire service area. So there's just a ton of detail on that we can absolutely provide. Physical and transition risks, I'll just make a quick note on that. I think there are a ton of resource and information gaps in that space. But what I will share with you is I recently participated last week in an Urban Land Institute technical advisory panel with our housing division that was putting forth recommendations on sustainable and resilient affordable housing. A lot of modifiers in there. And it was the first time I learned that this is starting to come up sort of more significantly in our region in insurance markets. And so I think it's starting to bubble to the surface, but not in sort of a very general sense. So I think that's a great idea. And then in changes in migration patterns, to my knowledge, we've not spent a lot of time on that. I love that idea. I will tell you that one of your fellow committee members, Stephanie Tetro, she's not here today. This is work she does sort of on the national scale and has been really active in looking at changing migration patterns and displacement in a lot of coastal cities. And so I think there's plenty of opportunity to look at how that impacts our growth. So those are great ideas, great suggestions. Curtis?
Just a couple of questions. One is, I know I need to look at the document, but the collaborations, I'm interested in knowing more about who and how you've been working with the collaboration of different, who the groups are or individuals are, and that's one. And then two is, I know grants expire, so in turn, how recent is the review of grants and how robust is that effort? Those couple of things.
Yeah. For collaboration of different stakeholders, we can probably prepare some high-level information on that, and then a lot of that is going to be project-specific, and so maybe we can highlight a few examples, or if this group has specific projects they're interested in hearing more about, we can talk about that process. For grants, I do think talking about how we're trying to leverage federal funding right now is really important. I can share from my perspective, just in trying to galvanize interest in seeking grant funding from within the mayor's office, but also on topics that I touch. Today alone, I had, and I'm looking at Riley Kate, I think we had probably 2 different meetings on 2 different DOE grants just today. But right now there are probably about 7 that we're juggling. And so we are trying to be more and more assertive and aggressive about pursuing grant funds. It is not something that Metro government as a whole is currently well suited to do. Just the amount of time that's usually involved in preparing a grant application, and then if you are successfully awarded funds, the amount of reporting and compliance and monitoring that needs to happen is again something we're not, for the most part, really well equipped to do. Some departments are better equipped than others just because they have a pretty steady federal funding pipeline, whether that be sort of non-competitive grant dollars or competitive grant dollars. And so we're having very active conversations about how we grow that capacity, both centrally, but also in individual departments. And that's going to take some time. But I do think it would be great. And I know that there have been council members, for example, who have expressed interest in wanting to understand what we're applying for, what's, currently top of mind when we're trying to work with federal agencies. So that's a great idea.
So my very high level, and I know there's a lot we're discussing, so hopefully as things roll out, we'll talk a lot more and drill down. But just kind of going forward, I'm wondering what, as the leader of this group, what your position is on how we interact with TVA/NES. In the past, I've only understood two positions. It's either play nice in the sandbox or be, in opposition, aggressive opposition. So just interested in your position on that. And then wondering if we can have a liaison to the NES meetings, that if we're meeting quarterly, we get kind of a report on where NES on some of their sustainability projections and what they're trying to do, and if we can help in some way. Thanks.
Great. Those are good suggestions. So from my perspective, I've always come from a background of more collaboration. There are absolutely times where I think it's appropriate to raise your voice and by all means express and share disappointment or frustration or disagreement with an approach that an entity like Nashville Electric Service or Tennessee Valley Authority does. And so I think when appropriate, that is something that we have done in the past. We have also regularly engaged in sort of the public comment process, and that can become a great avenue also for very transparently sharing feedback with them about their approach and strategy. I've really tried to spend a lot of time in the 3 years that I've been here with Metro trying to build those relationships. I think a foundation for getting work done anywhere is a strong relationship. And so I've really been focused on collaboration. I'll be the first to say that there are many times where it feels like our partners, whether that be NES or TVA, are not moving quick enough, but they are moving. And so I want to acknowledge that and try to leverage some of that momentum to move farther, faster. And then in terms of having an NES liaison here, as Jordan mentioned, they are on our list of invited entities and departments. I think with this first one, my guess is people may have looked at the agenda and thought, oh, this is very high level, it's their first meeting. But we can specifically make a request to get an update on sustainability activities, both from NES as well as TVA, if that's of interest. And then I regularly, I will not say always, but as my schedule allows, I attend NES board meetings. And so there's also an opportunity to communicate that way. But those are very rarely going to be the first opportunities that I would inform them of interest in wanting to collaborate or giving them feedback on a program. I meet pretty regularly with members of their leadership team and then their new sustainability manager as well. So I think we can talk about how to best leverage those avenues of communication to achieve some outcomes.
Only other one thought is maybe expanding the invite to the entire board, not just the president.
Okay.
Yeah.
Along the lines of your comments on NES, which I think were really great. So if we're going to reduce carbon emissions, there's the implied thought that we're going to be electrifying and not just fleet, but we're trying to encourage households to adopt EVs. We're probably trying to at least encourage households to do things like buy heat pumps instead of regular traditional HVAC. So I brought this up with NES and it wasn't a very conclusive conversation, but there's the companion piece to that of capacity and whether they're planning for that, whether they have a roadmap to electrification that they've been thinking of. So that's one thing. The other thing is with waste. Councilmember Berkeley Allen and I have been talking about, well, she had already been looking at the issue of C&D waste, and you and I had talked about that as well. And so just as we move forward, thinking about strategies to try and encourage or induce some reduction in C&D waste along with household waste. And I forgot my last one, but I'll just hopefully remember it at some point.
Awesome.
I was going to just mention on those C&D waste side, there were ordinances, a step trajectory, and I think those could be revisited for sure. So, I mean, that would be something to get, this group's advisement and support, and also some of us who are more boots on the ground with buildings, like we've identified several different challenges or several different opportunities, and it's just bringing all those other people along to understand. But I think I'm always the champion of ordinances. So I do think, to rise up and get everybody on the level playing field, the more that we can talk about what we can, even if it's a step trajectory of things and they know it's coming and they can plan for it, however we can help support that. I'm all for looking at what the industry is doing, not just here in Middle Tennessee, but broadly too, and what those challenges are. I just spent the last 2 days discussing exactly how hard C&D waste is in some places and how easy it is in others. So, yeah, good point for this group to start give advisement on.
Greenhouse gases are kind of my thing. I used to work for General Services, and I did the last 3 Davidson County emissions, and we definitely broke down the transportation. I remember because the 2 airports are also part of it, and I remember thinking it must be trucks. And as far as I remember, it is mostly regular vehicles. So what I wanted to talk about is a lot of the wonderful ordinances that you highlighted are mostly metro focused. And I don't remember the number, but I think it is, maybe Freddie remembers. I think the metro greenhouse gases are less than 5% or around 5% of the total Davidson County greenhouse gas emissions. So if you just focus on metro, you're obviously not moving the needle a lot. So my question is about where you see the influence that metro has on the rest of the emissions. For instance, my favorite topic, do you have any influence on the East Bank development? Is it built into any of the contracts?
So I think historically our approach to putting in place ordinances has been a lead by example approach. So let's sort of get our own house in order before we put forth goals and requirements for the community to meet. And so I think that's why you've seen historically an emphasis on metro activities. I think that's also what can very directly be controlled. And so there's a certain comfort level that government has in applying goals and targets and requirements to its own activities. As it relates to trying to use that influence and that authority to change sort of how development and the community is using energy and producing greenhouse gas emissions. We are making steps in that direction. We're having conversations about what sort of is a feasible ask for the commercial sector primarily is where we've thought about that. We also, as an example, I'll give you an example, as part of our update to downtown code design guidelines, are very explicitly talking about how sustainability and resilience have a role to play in built environment. And so I know that's just one example, but we are starting to see more incorporation of these concepts into requirements placed on the community. You mentioned East Bank, and there is current conversation about extending downtown code to the East Bank as a sub-district. And so one thing to be aware of is that any policies and programs that support sustainability and resilience as part of the downtown code will be things that are in play as it relates to the East Bank. The way our code is set up is there are obviously requirements, but then there are also incentive programs that can allow developers to do different things if they're sort of meeting certain thresholds for things that we're looking to incentivize. And so all of that is dynamic and unfolding, but it's just something to be aware of. The other thing I'll share as it relates to the East Bank is we are very well aware of sort of where the East Bank sits and some of the risks that can pose. And so there's very intentional design for programming green space into East Bank development so that we're creating performative landscapes and in ways to mitigate flood risk. And so I'll probably stop there. I'm getting a little bit out of my depth, but we can bring the East Bank team in if that's of interest to talk about sustainability. I know there are additional conversations about different types of frameworks that could be used there, but to my knowledge, those have not been fully determined yet.
That was a perfect segue into the one I would love to hear about in the future, and that's just kind of a general, like, what is the state of our building codes and ordinances around? I know there's, downtown has its own code, and then does Metro, and then Davidson County. What is that landscape look like for the building codes and as they relate to energy and sustainability and just kind of where things are?
Yeah, the reason I'm looking at Erica is she and I for many years have had email banter about thinking about performance standards and whether or not that's a reality in the future here in Nashville. And so actually just today, we got an email about being part of a Southeast cohort looking at benchmarking programs. We do have internal benchmarking, going back to Lead by Example, that we are doing for Metro facilities and across multiple portfolios, so not just the general services portfolio, but also pulling in schools and several other building types. We are now in our third year of that, and so we're starting to see trends, but just know that's also a very active area of discussion and something we can discuss as a group. So it's a great suggestion.
And if I remember correctly, when we adopted the new building code, we also adopted the International Energy Code, which has standards that are higher than just the building code, which I think is a step in the right direction to continue to push that. And I want to say yes to C&D recycling. I really want to have that discussion and figure out how we communicate better, that we can reduce the impact on neighborhoods that host these facilities by making it happen on site. And I think that's a message that we need to work hard to get out just from a neighborhood sustainability and environmental justice standpoint, which is also a piece of this. And then I want to circle back to the transportation and the greenhouse gas emissions. Metro Health, their air pollution division, has a really great annual report that it takes them several years to do it, but we haven't seen a new one come out since 2016. And that has mostly been focused on the criteria of pollutants like NOx and SOx and things like that, but it's not that hard to just add the greenhouse gas emissions factor and to add that as well. So that's a potential source of information that if we could persuade Metro Health to update and get, at least up to 2021 or something, that would give us I think, some good information and could add that transportation piece of it. And also sort of, they've got the breakdown between what is passenger cars and what is freight transportation. And until recently, the passenger cars were subjected to emission standards and the freight was not to the same standards. But now no one has the requirement, and it would be really interesting to have the information of did that matter or are car standards better. So I would love to have this group join me in the chorus of trying to get that updated. And then another one that is near and dear to me is tree canopy preservation, which figures into the rock slide thing, into the stormwater mitigation and all that. There's a stormwater study, phase 2, that's in the works that sort of informs that. There's the Highland Rim preservation study that's also sort of in the works, and I would love for this group to be supportive of those efforts so that we can help those people that are paying attention and are very eager to just help us put more teeth in our canopy preservation incentives so that actually is paid attention to as construction projects progress.
Because we were talking about building codes, and I'm sorry if this is a little too far away, but I'll get you a gift card to your favorite restaurant if you answer this question. As it relates to, in my work in solar, a lot of times the question is, do I have to have NES hookup? So you're thinking about being completely sustained by renewable energy. And I don't know the full answer to that. I feel like I've asked that question before, and I think there's some ambiguity there. So I'm wondering, as far as building codes are concerned, do our buildings, is there some local code that says our buildings must have service, electric service going to it?
I don't know the answer to that, but we're happy to find one for you.
And I'll get that gift card for you.
I'll just take this moment to share that this isn't the only opportunity you'll be able to provide input and feedback on what we discuss. As mentioned before, it'll be a combination of me identifying things that I think are relevant for this group to hear, but also trying to make sure we're tailoring our discussion to areas that you think we need to be focusing on as metro departments. And so we're about 10 minutes past our planned time. We can stay longer, but also recognize that this conversation that we're having right now doesn't stop today. Any other ideas or suggestions for topics for this group to discuss? Sure.
Hey, Matt Taylor, I am Deputy Director of the State Sustainability Office, and hopefully we'll be joining you all for the next meeting. Food waste obviously is a big ongoing topic that we're very interested in. I don't have a great understanding of how sustainability is considered in like natural resource planning in Metro, and so I'd be interested in learning more about that. So certainly like tree canopy, but also, are there open spaces that could be converted to grasslands that sequester a ton of carbon? What is the consideration for sustainability within that arena? Just not familiar with it.
Those are great ideas. So I'm going to high level repeat what Matt said for just so that can be captured. So food waste, and then a better understanding of how sustainability is incorporated into natural resource planning. And I'll just make a quick note on sustainability and natural resource planning. There's a lot of active conversation right now within our planning department. They've just stood up a unit of their design studio focused on sort of ecological and natural design. And so I'm happy to bring those updates back to this group. Those are good ideas. All right. Well, we will close out our first meeting. Our next meeting is September 12th. As I get some time to kind of map out and get more feedback from you all on topics and issues that you'd like to discuss, we may consider adding additional meetings beyond those that I've already communicated with you about. So stay tuned for more, and I'll send our slides out as well. So thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.